Hey, bud. So I have this bookshelf downstairs that's currently looking a little bit meh. And my idea is to turn the bookshelf into a fandom explosion. Each shelf is going to represent a fandom that my husband and I are obsessed with. And today I'm going to be starting with the first fandom, which is my favorite, Harry Potter. Since Harry Potter is my favorite fandom ever, it's actually going to be taking up 2 shelves. The bottom shelf is going to be a home for all of the collectibles that we've collected over the years, and the top shelf is going to be what I'm working on today. I'm going to be making a book nook of the Great Hall. I can just remember as a kid watching this scene where they enter the Great Hall for the first time, and I was just like, whoa, that's magic. Step 1 is going to be making the box that the book nook is actually going to be sitting in. I've got my concept drawing on my iPad here, foam board here that I got from the dollar store, measuring tape, cutting mat, cutting tools, tape, a pencil, and a cat. Let's get started.
Hello, voiceover man's here. You'll hear me a lot this video. Here I am making straight lines. Straight lines are definitely something that I should have paid more attention to this project. Spoiler. But anyway, I chose to use foam board for the box exterior because it's a fairly sturdy material, but also super easy to cut and also really cheap. So if I messed up, since this is my first time doing this, I could just get another board. It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be a box. Box? Yeah, it's a box.
Day 2. Today I'm just going to be painting the roof of the Great Hall, and I thought I would use the actual box roof itself and paint directly on it. I'm going to be using this photo for reference. I just think it's so magical, it's so perfect. Let's see if I can crack this out, shall we?
Attempt number 1. So I was drawing out the general placement of where I wanted my clouds and moon, etc. to go. And my idea was to start with a dark blue color and then work up from that, progressing eventually to a white. But as I was going along and adding more blues and some white, I realized that I actually hated it. So I tried fixing it by smudging things around with a napkin, and then I rage quit and started over. So attempt number 2, my idea this time was to just go in with the white and just take the paint and move it around. I know, revolutionary. But I hated this one too.
I haven't actually painted anything since high school, so I'm a little rusty, but I thought, oh, it's 10 years. It's like riding a bike, right? So I'm gonna relearn how to paint, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. Day 3! Let's give it up for day 3!
Let's give it up for day 3! Yeehaw! Day 3!
So last night after my rage quit, I did some extensive research on how to paint clouds, and I think I'm actually ready to do it today. So let's see if I can actually pull through.
So this attempt started off much better because I actually had a plan this time. And basically the tutorial said to start with your background color, so I added my dark blacks, grays, blues, etc. And then I started with the moon since it's going to be in the background of my painting. And basically then for the clouds, you kind of just layered that on top. And the tutorial said to start with your darkest blue and work your way up lighter and lighter from that, which I did in my very first attempt, but the trick is in the technique. Basically in the tutorial it said to start at the top of the clouds and just kind of swirl your brush downwards until it becomes kind of like a dry brush, and it'll kind of just make it look more like clouds. And then this is where I completely ignored the tutorial and added darker blue after adding the other color. And ended up regretting it, but hey, you live and you learn. This is my first time painting clouds, at least in 10 years, so what can you do? I did my best. Also, I'm realizing as I edit this that I kept calling it the roof and not the ceiling, so I'm sorry if that also bothers you, but it really bothers me. Yeah. Carry on, and sorry for the inconvenience.
As someone who hasn't painted a single thing since high school, I would say this is not too shabby. All right, now that I have the roof, it's time to make the walls of the Great Hall. So let's get sculpting. Look at my pants. Now that we have the ceiling for our Great Hall, it's time to make the walls. I'm going to be making the walls out of XPS foam, which I've never actually worked with before, but I'm optimistic that we can make it work.
So basically I'm just tracing out the wall of the box and then carving that out into the foam. That's basically all I'm doing. And then I start smoothing out the edges.
Now, for some reason, these two edges aren't lining up. I hope that it's okay. Should be fine. Right? Right? Okay, so now that we have our foam wall, I'm going to be cutting out the arches where the windows fit in. And I'm just going to draw out where I think the doors will be and then cut her out and hope for the best.
So I guess I didn't film me carving the first window out, but in the process I actually split the top of it by accident, so I have my glue gun out to glue that back together and pretend that nothing happened. So yeah, fun vibes. I mean, it's all part of the wall, right? I mean, stone breaks. It's natural. Totally meant to happen. After my wall was mended and recovering back from the hospital, I started detailing the outside of my windows. I saw this technique from Nerdforge. She just uses a pencil to carve into the foam and it works pretty well for detailing. So that's what I was doing. I also smoothed out the inside of the walls with my blade just because it was a little rough. I don't have a lot of tools, I'm just using with what I have, and so I never actually got a smooth edge, but it was close enough. I also used my pencil to carve the bricks into the wall, so this is just me showing the beginning of that process. And here I am making the rest of the bricks. Yeah, bricks. Ignore the broken wall. Bricks. Oh yeah. Before starting on the second wall, I wanted to work on the pillars that connect the walls to the ceilings. This is the reference photo that I'm using for it. It's basically the reference photo that I'm using for the whole project. And I decided to make them out of XPS foam as well because they'd be light and probably wouldn't do any damage to the wall. So yeah, let's make some pillars. Working on the pillars actually ended up being a lot easier than I anticipated. Basically, once you get the basic shape down, it's just 2 extra little slices and then you're good to go. Then I added some detailing with my pencil and repeated that 8 times.
We have a guest appearance here on the Man's Art channel, which is a Pippin. What are you making today, Pippin? I'm making, catnip. Wow, what an invention, Pippin. Thanks, it's gonna take lots of time. I'll be patient. Wise words you have. Thank you, Pippin. Okay, so we have 1 wall, 2 walls, and also 8 tiny wood beam pillars. So now it's time to make the back wall of the Great Hall. And I'm gonna just basically use the exact same material, XPS foam. So let's do it. Wall. I realized the back wall is actually 2 walls and then just a giant window in the middle. So that's what I got. Let's carve the details.
So the detailing on the back walls is basically just the same as all the other walls that I've been doing. Just bricks, bricks, and more bricks. And smoothing. More smoothing. Always smoothing.
There's some wood trim here that I didn't include in the original walls, so I'm going to try to carve those and stick them onto the walls that I currently have.
So my original plan for this was to use my XPS foam because I can get a lot of detail out of it. But I was trying to cut it lengthwise so it would be thinner so it wouldn't stick too far out from the wall and didn't fully work out.
These are too finicky to cut in half this way, so I'm going to use the material that I used for the walls and see how that goes.
So my plan was to try to cut the paper off of this material because I thought that the foam behind it would have been nicer to carve into, but the paper didn't rip very nicely, so I just scrapped that and just did as much indenting as I could onto the paper, but it could have looked a lot better if I planned ahead. The other thing about this material is that I could carve a little bit into it, but if I went too far it would just create these holes, so definitely won't be using this again for any detail, but it is a nice material for the box itself. Here's a closer look at where I was at this point. I had the pillars, the walls, and the trim all modeled and ready to be painted. Now that I had the walls, I decided it was time to do the floor. I just wanted to keep it simple, so I just used the box space itself and just carved into it as much as I could, making little rock type brick patterns. And yeah.
Cheers. Iced tea. So yesterday I made all these panels for the walls, and I thought the next step after that was going to be gluing everything together, but I realized I forgot one tiny detail. The gargoyles. So here's the plan. This is my wall. This is a pillar. This is the wall trim. And in this teeny tiny hole is going to live a little gargoyle. So little, in fact, that it's going to be the most difficult thing that I've carved so far.
So something about me is that if I see someone who can do something really cool on the internet, I think that I can also do that thing, even though I've had zero experience in that thing. So yeah, carving a tiny gargoyle with insane detail, yeah, totally. I can totally do that. Yep.
Okay, good idea in theory, but this little teeny tiny gargoyle looks so ridiculous when it's on the wall. I'll show you. So good news, bad news. I mean, I don't have to make teeny tiny gargoyles. I do have to make this again though, just bigger, and then the rest will be bigger. But that means less tedious carving for me. So round 2.
Here I am being even more delulu, thinking that I can do that same gargoyle but bigger and better somehow. Yeah, carving with this foam is not easy, and I don't know what I was thinking.
Okay, I give up. This is supposed to look like this. Oh yeah. I'm thinking I'm gonna try to do it in clay. I'm just a little worried about it being too heavy, but let's give it a go. It's gonna be better than this.
I took a little bit of my clay and immediately knew that it was just going to be too heavy. And you can tell by my beautiful face that I was very pleased with this fact. So I was like, well, I guess I have no choice. I have to use foam. And immediately was like, heck freaking no. I was defeated. I was over it. And then clay made of foam. So I bought myself some foam clay and went back to sleep. It was a rough day.
We got clay. So it's time to say goodbye to our ugly little gremlins and get sculpting on something nice. Hopefully.
So I had dabbled with sculpting in the past, but never with foam clay, so this was kind of new territory for me. And I noticed that with the foam clay, it molds way easier than any other clay I've used before. So because I was holding the base of it in my hand, it deformed, so I had to squish the body back up into the face and kind of move it around. And this was definitely not the best way to use foam clay. I think if I did it again, I would make each individual piece separately and then glue it all together rather than try to mold it all from one solid piece of foam clay, if that makes sense. It's all a learning experience, and I'm sure for the next project I'm going to be better because I have done it now. If you happen to be a foam clay expert or a sculpting expert or just have a little bit of knowledge in general, definitely leave it in the comments down below. I am literally a beginner in all this, so any tips I greatly appreciate.
This is the first gargoyle. It's gonna live right there. Yay! Now I have to do 7 more.
So the next gargoyle I did was the Ravenclaw one because I'm a Ravenclaw and I wanted to make that one next. I started with the neck and body of it and then added on the beak and face details as I went. And I think what was successful about this one was that the ball that the eagle is standing on is a separate piece, so then I could just add that on afterwards and then add the little feet on to that. And then do the same thing with the wings, add that on afterwards. I think it worked out a lot better than the previous one. And then I just added some detail like the feathers and voila. So I guess I didn't film me making the Hufflepuff one, but you can see it there on the bottom left. I ended up not being super happy with it. I just think the proportions are way off. It looks more like a pig than a badger, but anyway, you live and you learn. This is me making the snake gargoyle. I basically just folded it into a snake shape. I added the wings on afterwards, but I started with the base and then added the feathers on afterwards, and I wish I just created the entire wing separately and then added that on afterwards. It would have just worked out better. Like for this gargoyle, which is my second Ravenclaw gargoyle, I did the wings separately, and it just makes it so the clay doesn't touch and become way more difficult to maneuver. Also, this way you can add way more detail because you're not worried about that. That's my tip to future me. I ended up redoing my original lion gargoyle because I just got better over time, but here's one wall of gargoyles complete. And here's Weasley.
Okay, I'm finally done my gargoyles, and I'm honestly really happy with how they turned out. My first batch of them ended up being a little bit meh by the time I got to the end because I had to put in about 10 hours of sculpting by that point. But it was my first time working with foam clay, and I love working with it. Here's a look at all my gargoyles from first gargoyle to the last one.
So here's my first styrofoam one. And then slowly I got a little bit better. And then this one, I actually started adding more detail, like the feathers. This is the side that's going to actually be visible to the audience. Then I got my snake, my other snake. And then my second raven. This is my favorite gargoyle I did. I love the feathers on that one. And then my lion boy. And my last one.
Now my next step is really exciting. It's time to glue my gargoyles, my ceiling beams, and my wall trim onto my foam walls. So let's do this. I'm so excited to see it all come together. I'm so freaking happy about these. This is going to be the left wall, and this is going to be the right wall. It's gonna look so freaking cool. I'm so excited to see the final result. My little gargoyle babies are so cute. First, I need to spray paint these, so let's take it to the garage, shall we?
Welcome to my garage.
Safety first. Oh yeah, let's get spray painting. It is a little bit heavy on the spray paint. I hope it dries okay. Oh. Okay, day, whatever the heck day it is. We now have some glorious spray painted walls. Glorious. So now that we have the base coat, it's time to paint the colors that they're actually supposed to be. It's basically just going to be stoned color and wood color. I don't know what that even means. But first, it's time for some bang security, because my god, our bang's annoying when I'm trying to do anything. Let's do this. Okay, so I'm no paint expert, but I've heard that painting colors behind the stone color that you're going to end up using kind of just gives it more life. So I've done just a color pass, and then I will get on to the actual color of the brick overall.
Basically what I meant there is that bricks aren't just the color of bricks, they do have different colors in them, so I started with those colors. But what I failed to realize is that once you get those colors in, it's best to use a watered down paint or like a wash over top of the colors, because then you can still see the colors behind the wash, otherwise they just kind of disappear. So I ended up just painting the wall, and then I had to redo the colors after that. This whole project is basically just a bunch of trial and error because I am starting at beginner levels, so everything is a learning experience, and I can just take what I learned and apply it to the next project. And also I took that knowledge and applied it to the back wall. I just started with the base color, and I added the colors like the reds and blues, etc. on top of that. Then I started painting the gargoyles, and I just did the same thing, started with the base color that I kind of wanted to go with, and then built on from that. And then for the trim color, I basically just painted it dark brown.
Okay, so yesterday I did my first coat, and I'm not super in love with the color, to be honest, and also just the painting technique in general. So I think what I'm going to do is I have some tin foil here, and I'm going to put it on the brick to make a better brick texture. And I'm also gonna carve into the bricks again with my pencil and the brick lines just a little bit deeper, so then the paint will end up going inside and make it look more like a brick. Hey, Weasley! My husband's also lent me some of his paints that he uses for his miniatures, and they're a wash paint, so I'm hoping that when I put them on my brick, they'll go into the lines and thus make the lines a bit more defined as well. He also lent me this dry stone paint, which you use a dry brush with, and you just go over the thing that you're painting, and this will paint the raised parts of that thing. So once I get my brick texture on, I'm going to do another paint coat of the color that I actually want the walls to be, and then I'm going to do the wash and then do this. Let's go.
I learned this technique from Nerdforge as well. I learned a lot of stuff from her videos, to be honest. Basically, you just take a crumpled piece of tinfoil and smack your wall with it, making little indents. And it ends up looking a bit more brick-like. And then, like I said, I just went over my bricks again with a pencil to make them a little bit deeper. And then I did all that to the back wall as well. And here I am going in with the final color of my wall before applying the wash. Once I started putting the wash onto the wall, things started to come together, and I was very happy with how the bricks were looking. I also applied the same wash to the gargoyles, and it really just brought them to life a little bit more, which is awesome.
Okay, I'm obsessed with how this turned out. Like, what? For a first time doing this, I'm shocked that it ended up looking this good. And I know that makes me sound like I'm super full of myself, but I'm actually just shocked at it ending up not looking like a total garbage fest of poo. Halfway through the project, I literally thought that I was just gonna be like, nope, that is too over my head. I literally cannot do this. So the fact that it looks this good, I'm just gonna take that as a win. Good job, me. Okay, so now that I have the walls all done and the floor, I think it's time to figure out the table and chairs that are gonna go on the floor. And my plan is to use the foam board that I used for the bottom trim of this wall, and also use that for the benches. And for the teachers and Dumbledore's chairs, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet, but I'll figure that out once I get to it. So let's do this, shall we? I realized a little bit of an issue with my current wall setup. The wing of the Hufflepuff Badger is currently stabbing the back wall, and there's a big gap in between the two. So I'm going to have to perform an amputation, unfortunately. At least it's just Hufflepuff.
Anyway, back to the tables. So I just basically cut out long strips for the tables. I liked using this material for them because I didn't really want to add a lot of detail in terms of carving into the tables. I guess I could have added some like wood texture and stuff like that. And maybe if I did it again, I would find some sort of foam board that's thinner that I could do that. But for this project, it was my first time and I just wanted to keep it simple. And then for the legs of the tables, I thought I could use this clay, but I quickly was like, nope. And I went back to my trusty foam clay. Basically, I just rolled the clay into little wormies and folded them, and voila, those are my table legs. Not very fancy, but hey, they're gonna be painted anyway, and they did the job, so I say that's a win. Then I carved out some thinner bits from the foam board, and those were going to be the benches for the tables. As you can see, there's a small pile on the right and a big pile on the left, and you can guess which one is the broken benches, because this material did not work well for teeny tiny details.
Okay, now that we have our tables, it's time to glue some benches to them. Let's go. This bench is a little broken.
This step was not very exciting to watch, so let's just hyperspeed through this one.
Yesterday I was just too dang tired to go on, so I stopped at making my table and benches. These students will sit on these little tables and eat their feasts. I also made the platform that the teachers and headmaster table will go on. And yeah, so the next step is basically adding details. I'm going to be making the chairs for this table and a lot of little itty bitty snacks. Some snacks on this table. It's going to be a lot of little babies sculpting. So let's get started, shall we?
So I went into this part of the project with a little bit of knowledge because I already used the foam clay before. So I learned that basically with these brushes, you can actually dip the tips in water and then it'll make the clay easy to sculpt into and form and cut. And it's just marvelous. So here I am making the headmaster's chair, aka Dumbledore, obviously. And yeah, I started with the back and then worked my way up from that, making the seat cushion and the arms, etc. Which was a very good tactic, I must say. And I will definitely take that knowledge and apply it to future projects. And then here I am making one of the other professor's chairs, and I basically just used the exact same tactics, starting with the back because it's flat against the mat, and then building up from that. And then here I am making 3 more. Then it was time to start on the food, and I started with the goblets. Basically, my idea was just make a little wormy and then cut the top and bottom off of it and then shape the middle to make the indent of the goblet. Then for the plates, I basically just made little blobs and I just used my tool with the round head and stabbed it. And then for the food that goes into the bowls, I just basically made little tiny balls and odd shapes and just stuck them inside. That sounded so wrong. I'm sorry.
Look at my little tiny baby food. Ah, look at my little turkey. And then I have all these little plates that the students are going to eat on. And my little tiny goblets. Cheers. I'm so excited to paint these. Ooh! Let's get painting these beauties. These little blaster pieces.
So basically in the reference photo, it seemed that all the goblets and plates were gold. So I just went in and painted them all gold, baby. And then when I got to the actual food, I wanted this plate specifically to be little corns. So I just got my yellow paint, basically, mixed some white, and just painted it on.
It's cold!
I didn't go too much into details with the food. I basically just got the basic color on and called it a day because we'd be seeing at a distance anyway, so I figured that would be fine. In terms of the rest of the food, I kind of imagined it to be turkey, peas, mashed potatoes, and corn as the meal. Oh, and buns. So I just kind of used those colors on the different plates. Gave some people vegetarian meals, like just peas and mashed potatoes. Gave other people full-on just turkey because, I don't know, some people are weird. These white tubes that I'm painting are going to be the napkins. I just was going to cut them in half later. And then I'm painting the chairs. I went with the colors that I saw in the picture that I was referencing. Gold, green, and brown. So, yeah. For the benches, I ended up just going with the dark brown, and then I added a glossy finish on top to give it kind of a wood type look.
Here are the finished tables. This is a platform that the head table is going to be on. And here's all my food. It looks so cute! There's my turkey. This is supposed to be peas. And here's the students' plates. This person's a vegetarian. They have mashed potatoes and peas only. And then some people have some chicken or turkey, mashed potatoes. And then I finished my chairs as well. This is the headmaster's chair. Yeah, I'm so excited to see it all together. Oh, cool. Okay, so I finished painting my food and chairs, and before I glue all that together, I realized that I have to tackle the back wall of the Great Hall first. Based on the reference photo, it looks like there's an extra panel here, and then this part is a window, and I know that originally it's supposed to be a stained glass window, but I couldn't find a good image of the stained glass window, and also I just didn't feel like making one, so instead I'm using this forest background as what's going to be outside the window, and I'm going to cover that with a plastic sheet and then cover that with some window trim and detail. Also, I'm going to add some lights in between this layer and the paper just so that there's some light in the Great Hall. I'm also debating putting lights in the ceiling and have them hang down and make little candles, like the hanging floating candles that are in the Great Hall. But I'm not totally sure if that will look good because there's going to be all these wires. So I'm going to just experiment with some things and see what ends up looking the best. Let's do all the experimenting then, I guess. I feel like I end every single clip like, let's do this then, I guess. It's all a learning process. I've never done any of this before, so this is just, I'll find out with you if I can do this or not.
So upon looking at other reference photos for the Great Hall, I realized that in some pictures there is a connector arch that connects the two sides of the back wall, and I decided that I actually really like that look, so I carved and added that to my back wall. It would have been a lot easier if I did this at the beginning, but I mean, here we are. And I think it does add a lot, so I am glad I ended up doing it. So basically what I'm doing here is trying to decide where to put the light, and I eventually decide to carve into the back of the box and put the lights behind that.
Yeah. That's the effect we're going for. Sick! Alright, time to paint these extra bits that I've made and glue it all down after it's dry. Yes! Okay, while those are drying, I'm gonna start gluing my teeny tiny food onto my little tables. I'm so excited about this part.
I can't tell you how much super glue I got on my fingers during this process. Don't do what I did, just use tweezers or something. Protect your hands.
Oh my god, these are so freaking cute. Just imagine little students sitting at the table eating their little dinners. It brings me so much joy. All right, now my things that I painted are now dry, so I'm going to glue them onto the back wall, and then it's time to work on the window itself and decide on my candle light situation thing. Let's go.
This part was so satisfying, being able to finally glue the table and chairs onto where they're supposed to go. Up until this point, you just kind of hope that everything's going to come together in the end, but being able to actually see it start to come together is just chef's kiss. This is me carving out the window details for the back wall window.
Okay, here's my current debate. I kind of feel like this is too bright of a background, especially with the lights, because the scene is actually supposed to be at nighttime. It's when they first come into the Great Hall and it's a dinner time. So what I was thinking is putting a little sheet of origami paper in between the background and the window slats things to make it look darker, but I'm just wondering if it's too dark when the lights aren't on. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so here it is without the lights on, and here it is with the lights on. I do think it looks kind of cool because it is supposed to be a nighttime scene, but I'm wondering without the lights if it just looks like black. It definitely does just look like black. So I'm going to try and figure out some sort of happy medium.
12 seconds later.
Okay, I think I found a happy medium. It's tissue paper. It's like a tiny bit thinner than origami paper. Not super thin, but it is more see-through when the light is behind it. Oh my god, the day is finally here. It's finally time to glue everything together and see how the final result is going to look. After I glue everything together, I'm going to be figuring out the light situation. I'm leaning towards using the lights because you just simply cannot have a Great Hall without floating, light up candles. It just does not make sense. So I'll have to figure out something with the wires. And after that's done, I am done. I'm really happy with my back wall situation. I have faith that once there's a light behind, it'll all come together. So yeah, let's get gluing, shall we? Yes.
So remember how I said that I drew straight lines at the beginning? This is where it bit me in the butt, that they were actually not that straight. And so the back wall didn't fully line up with the side wall, and also didn't fully line up with the ceiling. but a lot of maneuvering got it looking mostly right.
So I think this will work. I am basically just putting hot glue on the light and then just waiting for it to like mostly dry. And then I'm just doing a little twirly twirl and then shape it to end up looking like something like that. I think that'll work.
So the technique mostly worked. I am a little disappointed with how the candlesticks look in the end. I think if I were to do this again, I would make some sort of mold and then I could just put the light in the mold and then put the glue on top of that, and then it would make a perfect candlestick each time, rather than just me moving it around with my fingers and shaping it to look sort of kind of like a candlestick. It also would have saved my fingers from some burns.
Okay, the lights are on. The final details have been sorted out. And now it's time to show you the final result. It's done. Yes! He's so excited it's done. Thought I would do a little post-mortem and break down all the things that I probably would change if I could, or if I did this project again. I'm not going to do this project again for a long time. The first thing is that I would measure everything and measure everything again. I had a lot of redos because I missed measurements or I didn't draw straight enough lines and I didn't cut straight enough lines. How do you cut straight lines with foam board? Asking for a friend. The second thing I would do is not paint directly on the foam board, the paper one that I got from Dollarama. Painting on that ended up causing a lot of warping in it. It didn't end up drying straight, so I had to actually put a book on top of it for a while to straighten it back out. I think next time I would use wood or something like that. And the third thing is that I would figure out the lighting before I did the project. The candlesticks do look cool, and I do like the light behind the window, but I do think that it is still a little dark, and I thought it'd be really cool if I added some flame effects, because the gargoyles in the Great Hall do actually hold flames, like lantern type flame buckets. But by the time I realized it was a little too dark in there, I had already finished the project. So I wasn't about to go back and put holes and stuff, so you learn. This project was a huge learning opportunity for me. I had never worked with foam board before in my entire life. I literally just thought it was for insulating walls. I mean, it is, but I also have never used foam clay, which was new. I love how light it is, and it doesn't get on your fingers. It's just clean and beautiful. Beautiful foam. I was also able to relearn how to paint because I hadn't done that since high school. So that was fun. I have a lot of other shelves to fill, and so this is only going to be part one of my big bookshelf makeover. So I hope you stick around and watch the rest of my fandom bookshelf making. I'm going to be working on some smaller projects as well as the bookshelf project, because judging by this shelf, it's going to take a long time to do the rest of them. So wave that magic wand at that subscribe button and like it. I couldn't think of something creative for liking it. Anyway, that's all for me. I'm Mans. This is Mans Art Workshop, and I'm here to remind you that life is meant to be enjoyed. So go enjoy it. Yay!